Well, good morning, everyone, to those that have been here already and to those that are joining us at some other time in some other place. This is the School of Christian Mysticism weekly meditation. And it's today, the 3rd of January 2022, so the first Monday in 2022. Extraordinary to be alive in 2022 somehow. So the meditation this morning springs in its inspiration from the readings which we've just enjoyed in morning prayer. And I'll give you references now for these if you'd like to look at them later on. They're Psalm 127, 128, and 131. And these are short, very beautiful Psalms, 127, 128, and 131. The Old Testament reading is taken from the book of Ruth, and it's chapter 2. And the New Testament reading is Paul's letter to the Colossians, chapter 3, verses 1 to 11. And today we'll be concentrating mainly on the reading from Ruth, but we'll see where that goes. So may this meditation be in the name of love, in the name of the unity of the One. May it be in the name of love eternal, love incarnate in the Christ in us, and the love, the Spirit flowing into us and out of us into the world, that it may be of service in the world. Amen. So let us continue in meditation, or begin meditation, by just attending, as we often do, to becoming present. Becoming present, first of all, to our bodies. Taking the breath and directing it to the body, this wonderful incarnation that we have to be part of this, the earthly reality of this planet's life, the hands and feet of the divine on earth. So let's just check in with our bodies. Being aware of any areas of tension or aching. Just allowing the life of the breath to bring us to awareness, but also to bring a soothing, to bring healing. Sometimes we find that as we come into awareness like this, we find that a part of ourselves is not at all present. Was kind of somewhere else, like out the door, or doing what we were doing before we sat down, sometime in the past or sometime in the future, like almost as if a foot or a leg or part of one's heart were somewhere else. So when we come into awareness and presence, we retrieve those bits. We bring them into the wholeness of our body sitting here. And there are times when that's easy, and times when that's more difficult. And the thing which brings us back together to make a whole of us instead of parts is an approach, an attitude of love and kindness, of understanding. And let's become aware that now of our minds, becoming present to our mind and the thinking that's going on in our minds. And we may experience the many thoughts, like clouds scudding across a blue sky. And we let them scud across without judgment. Just to note that they're there, to note what is preoccupying us, and then to let it go. And at any time in the meditation, we may take a moment just to check in this way, to note that we are thinking something extraneous and to let it go. And we are here to put on the mind of Christ, as Paul says, or rather to remember that the mind of Christ is within us. And that's the blue sky. So let's be aware of the blue sky, of the mind of Christ within us. And let's turn our attention to the condition of our hearts, being aware, coming to presence, aware of any emotions, or what particular emotions that we have today, maybe several at once. Dealing with our emotions, as we know, can armor the heart. If they're difficult emotions, they can armor the heart, and becoming present in a loving way, we can relax the heart and let it expand. So being aware of that happening now, with breathing very deeply into the heart. And as we descend deeper, we may become aware of the peace, which is that underlying state of the heart of peace, the heart from which living water springs, as Jesus said to the woman at the well. Out of your belly, out of your heart shall come living waters. So being aware of ourselves as a fount of life. So today we're meeting at the beginning of this year, at a time, as we know, when much has happened in the last 2 years, both in an environmental way and in human consciousness or lack of consciousness. And we're at a time of great change and with the possibility of transformation, the possibility of changing things for the good within ourselves and in the world. And we're approaching Epiphany with that lovely story of the three kings coming and giving their gifts to the baby or the infant Jesus. And so I pray that this meditation this morning be a gift for us as we gather around wisdom's table and drink her drink and eat her food. And bask in the community which we are. Bask in the light and warmth of being together, near and afar, being together and touching the very source of life together, and knowing how that fundamentally changes things. So today I'd like to share something about the book of Ruth, the story of Ruth in the Old Testament. It's one of my favorite books. It's a lovely story, which is one of two books or three books, Ruth and the two books of Samuel, which are wedged or hold a ground, let's say, between long, interminable almost stories from Judges, followed by interminable stories about the Kings and Chronicles. And in the School of Christian Mysticism, we often look at the stories in these interminable books, which are full of battles and all sorts, and cruelties, as pictures of our ego, the struggles of our ego. But like a well of clear water, like a drop of that living water, in the middle there is the book of Ruth, which shines like a star. And it's a story of a human kindness in every way by both the women and also by the main man, whose name is Boaz. And interestingly, the story of Ruth begins in Bethlehem. The family of Ruth's mother-in-law, whose name is Naomi, they have fled from Bethlehem. And for Christians, of course, Bethlehem has a particular ring to do with the birth of the Christ Jesus. And 10 years before the story, they've fled to Moab, and there the two sons of Naomi have taken wives, and one of these wives is Ruth. But all goes wrong in Moab, and famine and disease happens, and the men die. And so Naomi and Ruth and the other daughter-in-law are left, And Naomi decides to return to Judah, to return to her homeland, and she sets out alone, but her daughters-in-law run after her. And she says, "Do you want to stay with me? I'm not going to produce more husbands for you." And one of them in the end does go back, but Ruth stays with her and utters the beautiful lines, "Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people shall be my people, and your God shall be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. I swear a solemn oath before the Lord, nothing but death shall divide us." So Ruth, a woman of beauty and devotion, compassion, and Naomi walk the long and dangerous walk for two women in those times back to Judah. And they are in rags and very poor, although Ruth is actually a Moabite princess. And they get to Judah and they are welcomed, but remain poor. And Ruth goes out to glean the fields. It's harvest time. And there is a law, a Jewish law, which says that those that own the fields and harvest the grain must leave the gleanings around the edges of the fields for those that are poor and need that sustenance. So in the middle of a very difficult situation of poverty and a hardship, there is a law which is soft and gentle and considerate. And so Ruth goes out to glean the fields, and it happens that she chooses the field of Boaz, who happens to be a relative of Naomi's ex-husband. And so the story is in train for Ruth and Boaz eventually to meet. And Boaz is impressed by not only the story of Ruth looking after Naomi and sticking by her, but also by her demeanor. So let's, in our own imagination, bring this story to life. The fields full of people harvesting by hand, the men with scythes, the women picking up the sheaves of grain, and the poor people, including Ruth, picking up the grain which falls to the ground at the edges of the fields so that they can eat. And Boaz sees Ruth there, and he goes up to her, and he says to her that he'll look after her and to come to only his fields, and he'll make sure she's not molested, and that she can take drink when she needs it, and so on in the hot fields. And she says to him, after bowing her face to the ground, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you recognize me, a stranger? Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you recognize me, a stranger?" And apparently the word recognize and stranger are from the same root and occur only once in the Bible. So somehow the link between recognition and strangeness is important, that what appears to be alien both in ourselves and in others can be recognized, can be brought into the fold of unity. What happens in the story is that eventually at harvest time, and we're back to the threshing floor of our Advent retreat, Ruth goes to find Boaz, and eventually they get together, and Boaz marries her, and Ruth gives birth to Obed, who is the great-grandfather of, I think it's Solomon, and it is from that line that both Jesus and Mary come. So somehow a great circle is made from Bethlehem into alienation and strangeness, and then back to Bethlehem, to Judah, through kindness, the recognition of what seems alien, leading eventually to, again, the birth of the Christ. So I invite us now to become aware of a part of our self which seems a bit alien to us, which seems a bit strange to us. A part of ourself that we rather wasn't there, for example. For myself at the moment, having just moved to a new place, I'm aware that a part of myself is a feeling of strangeness, of alienation, and I'm aware that with that feeling, then I might, or I feel the tendency to barricade myself. which increases the problem of alienation, of course. So you might have a part of you which you're aware of, or a little pattern like that, also which needs to be brought into the fold of love. It needs to be recognized by the Boaz in us. And brought to safety and to rest and to nourishment. So I'd like to lead us in a trance which uses the two Aramaic words, Allah, meaning the oneness, as we know, and Niyach, that's N-Y-A-C-H, N-Y-A-C-H, Niyach, which means rest. So the divine state of oneness and being at rest in that, not being alien, not being estranged, not being unwanted, but simply to be included and at rest. Allah Niyah. So this goes like this. Allah Allah Niyah. Allah Allah Niyah. Allah Allah Niyah. Allah Allah Niyah. If you like to join me in the chant, Allah Allah Niyah. 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 Allah, Allahania, 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 Allah, So breathing out, Niyah, just letting go. Breathing in Allah, the oneness. Bringing all into the oneness, to be at rest and at peace, to be at one. Breathing out, Niyah. Breathing in Allah. And letting go of repetition now, just sitting for a moment before we come to a close in the tuning of this practice. Amen.